Hey there, welcome to saas.unbound, brought to you by saas.group. I'm your host, Anna Nadeina, and this is the show where we bring inspiring founders to talk about their stories and how they got their business to be a success. And today with us is David Smooke, the founder of Hackernoon, one of the leading tech publications on the internet. Welcome, David.
Hey, thanks for having me, Anna. Excited to be here.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for making the time. And, buckle up. It's going to be a bit of an improv because the only preparation we did is talk about the fact that we don't want to touch upon the founding story. So only the changes, the scaling, and,
I'm an
what it
open book.
brings.
We can talk about whatever you want.
Okay, that sounds great. So, for anybody who somehow doesn't know, and honestly, if you ask me 8, 9 a month ago, I probably wouldn't know what to say what Hackernoon was. So what is Hackernoon?
Hackernoon is a company, internet company. So we publish technology stories and we build publishing software. So we employ editors, software developers, and business development to grow our site. We're publishing about 42 stories a day, really trying to focus on what's next in tech, and get the leading experts publishing here about how things are actually built. We're a lot more of a how and why site than a what and when and where site, if that makes sense. And I've been at it now 6-7 years. It's kind of changed a lot, over the years. Bootstrap for the first 2 years, equity crowdfunding in the third year, then strategic investment, and basically doubled revenue for about 5 years in a row. And last year we didn't double revenue, but we did increase it. So, I'm kind of in the spot where it's stable. My team is really good. And I'm kind of figuring out like all this software we're building, how I can, bring it out to the web and not just on Hackernoon. So that's kind of the state of where we're at.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, and obviously, like I got to Hackernoon. I think I published my first story last summer, and over the last 6 months, there have been so many changes. So, and we'll obviously get there. But you started talking about focusing on tech. So I know a little bit about the founding story, how you were building like a dozen of other websites at the same time. So why Hackernoon? What was so different
the first app we built was called Mapshot. And what you could do was take a picture and put it on the background of a map. And this was before like that feature existed in Apple, because I'm so old. And then it would cover the background. And if people liked it, the picture would get bigger, and so like that was where it started. But really it was that, and it didn't work. So, it was hard to like, because in the beginning, if software developers don't want to work with you because you don't have enough to compete with the large companies, and people don't want to fund you because you haven't built something before. And it's way easier to build something if you have labor or money. So it's kind of like a catch-22 in the beginning, where you're trying to figure out where you can get some labor, how your labor can actually go into something that's scalable and repeatable. I was just really trying to focus on how to get outside of pay by the hour, because even there, like, lawyers make great money, but at the top, the lawyers still own their own firms. They still have reached the same conclusion that it's better to own the business than it is to be paid by the hour for anything. Even if you're, $1 million an hour, you could probably, if you're worth $1 million an hour, you could probably use your own time and make a lot more money, building something so that builds up. So that's where my head was at. And Hackernoon hit the right spot because people were able to gain value from it without exchanging money. So it was proof that there is an underlying economy here that was happening. You had writers that needed editing and distribution, and we needed content. And it kind of say, hey, if we're going to be a home for like a community and a destination where we can get more readers for writers and improve the content of bringing it as to Hackernoon as opposed to somewhere else, it just hit a nice sweet spot where I could use my editing skills in the beginning, and I could edit a bunch of stories. And the secret is, if the content's better, it's easier to distribute in the beginning. So like it starts by making the content better and then make the distribution better. And then you go back to making the content better. Then you go back to making the distribution better.
Lots of back and forth.
Yeah.
Right. So, what was Hackernoon in the beginning? I know that at first it wasn't your own software, and you started focusing on it a lot later.
Yeah, I mean, it's just way better when you have your own software. Like you just control where things are. You like once someone else is making the decision is will be made. Where the button is, where the text is, where the call to action is, all those things will happen no matter what. I think we could make a better business if we choose where and when they happen. So that was like the underlying thing. I used Medium's content management system to build a publication, and had it on my own custom domain, and it was on my site, but it had to come with all their bells and whistles, all their backdoor whatevers, all the extra things that circles around content when you use that site. So, we used equity crowdfunding to raise money from our readers and build a small software team. And we've been at it now 3 years with our own content management system, which is pretty sweet. It allows me to spend more time building software, which is like what I wanted to do. So, I'm feeling pretty good about my day to day. And it's just, you see people ride and die with these social media sites. Like, oh, I have 10 million followers on TikTok. How do you make money? It's like, okay, so I guess I distribute paid TikToks to people. It's like you end up building all your audience on someone else's thing. And it's just, you don't control what's going to happen next. So, it's been traffic is pretty diversified now, which is like really a goal, to get traffic from search, traffic from direct, traffic from email, then traffic from social too is nice. But it's like having a healthy, sustainable, like I'm a guy who wants to grow 2x every year. 2x every year adds up a lot. So that's, I'm not like, kind of VCs have passed on Hackernoon before in the past because it's like that's not attractive, David. Why do you want to be 2x every year? It's like, well, that's pretty good. It's healthy growth. It's not growth that is going to disappear the next day. It's about
Right.
continuing to build up every day. So I hope that circled back to what is Hackernoon.
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, this is, I think, super important. A lot of founders are struggling with the fact that at some point, the solution that they're working with is not sustainable anymore. So, at what
Yeah.
point do you start building something on your own? And how much money, how much time do you spend on it? How do you fund it? So, it's a huge problem for a lot of founders. And well, you figured out obviously at the very right moment. And well, Hackernoon also moved on from being the place where hackers spend their afternoon, right, to being one of the leading tech publications on the internet. So, and when I found it, I was just amazed how focused it was. Like, it was very good quality articles. The community that you have there is super engaged, and everyone, it's not, it looks very big, and obviously you drive a ton of traffic every month, but it's still kind of very niche, and the writers that are there. So how do you keep it that focused?
Well, I'm sure the people on the inside wouldn't say we're that focused. It's nice to hear that from the outside. I think focus, in terms of how I structure the team, I think it results in how some of the output of what we do. So the key meetings of our company are weekly meetings around editorial, product, and sales and sponsorship. So, those meetings are happening every week. Like right before the product meeting happens, that 12-hour window is when the most stuff ships. And it's just like I didn't say to do that. It just became like a thing of like, this is the cadence that we move. So I think that's been very helpful for what I've learned about software is like the more you can do small releases and you can get the unit down, the more you reduce risk. Like everyone's trying to release a big new version and relaunch or launch the thing, and it doesn't really matter. It's more about like how many small units you can just keep shipping time after time after time after time. So that's kind of it means you have less bugs when you ship because you're shipping smaller things. It means it's harder to say what a true new version is, but it's you'll end up getting much further to where you want to go if you can break it into much smaller pieces. So that's been really helpful for a lot of. I love when people notice features before we talk about them. It's just like, hey, there's a new print button on the page, and it's like this well formatted PDF because bizarrely a bunch of people still want to print stories. And like I was like, okay, that's interesting. I'll put a tiny little button for you guys, and then and then it prints the story. So yeah, I think it's been, and then we look at the top with our numbers that we try and keep moving, and it's how much time people are reading, how much money we're making, and how many people use it, so it's and I don't know. From the outside, it's hard to say what Hackernoon is because I'm just so in the middle of it right now. That I like that. You kind of get this thing of like you look at your big numbers and then you see the anecdotes of what surrounds your business and how this impacts their life or not. And seeing like sometimes we lost someone's draft once, and it's like an emotional thing. It feels like, oh, I lost my draft, and I just spent a bunch of hours on this, but now we changed the way autosave works, and then you move on, to the next thing. You can't help the past, but you can say, how did I mess up, and what am I going to improve, and I'll build a little moment, and maybe that next person won't run into that problem again. So I think building like from really individual user anecdotes and combining with what the team consensus is, it's because we'll kind of make a lot of product cards and we'll say, hey, I'm going to describe this thing in detail. Now I'm going to give you a wireframe or a Figma of it, and I'm going to put it there. And then it's like, okay, if 12 things are putting there, then the software developer picks, which of those next 4. So that's kind of also like, and we try to do the same with editorial of here's all the stories that come in. Here's the type of stories they are. Here's how you filter them. Which ones do you like? Read the ones you like, So I think letting individual contributors pick their project means I don't have to manage them as much. It's much more like, you've already said this was going to work. You've already chosen to work on it over other things. You can't complain to me about why am I working on this, So I think that type of stuff has just kept the thing morphing in a way that's healthy, in a way where I'm not driving too much of what's coming next. And, hopefully the market reflects that, and they want to put their logos, and they want to publish their content, and they want to republish their blogs, and they want to, so that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, that's a very positive approach, but you still keep a lot of like personal touch, right? There is a second person that gets every article, and I was super surprised. Like, it adds a certain friction though, and I was wondering, like, were you aware of that? Like, when did you introduce this feature, and how did the audience receive it?
So we've always had an editor, I've starting with me, so that's where it's always been. And I mean, I at first I didn't pick it, it was like, hey, I want to start a site, and you want to start a site, you're going to be an editor. And I wasn't on my own blogging platform. Now it's my own blogging platform. I realize most content if you aggregate all the blogging platforms, the majority of posts are garbage. And it's just, there's so much garbage on the internet surrounding the good stuff, and people will use these blogging platforms as dumping grounds and putting their garbage, so that it drives something back to their core. So I just didn't want a high percentage of my posts on my site to be bad. So I think that's where, rejecting half the stories is the right call. Sometimes we reject the wrong ones and people get upset, or they're not good enough, and they come back and they improve and they learn how to improve, and then they come back. And other times they're gone forever, and that's fine. I'm fine with some level of attrition and, letting people publish elsewhere, because it means there's a higher quality bar for the reader. The next story will have a better headline. It will have better grammar. It will be more well structured. It will be more well organized if an editor spends 20, 30 minutes on it. It's going to make the experience better. And the trade is, I'm hosting your content, I'm paying for the editing, I'm paying for the distribution, and then there's an ad, at the top and the bottom of the story. And that's the trade we make in exchange of value. And if I make that trade, I've made that trade 50,000 with 50,000 people. And that's kind of, the trade that I found that works on the internet. What you want is a repeatable little spot. I don't need to be everything to everyone.
So it's roughly 50% of the articles being rejected.
Yeah, because you'll get runs of people trying to game the system and spam, and we sort all of our articles. We have a lot of different systems to measure the quality of an article. Like every article that comes in, we check for plagiarism right away. So you can get flagged right there if you're plagiarizing content. Now we're starting to check for AI writing, which the tools to call are still very new, and they have a decent, not a great hit rate, and then it's kind of like we want to keep rewarding original content and repeat contributors. So, looking at faster turnaround for those type of things, we're happy to republish content, but long-term sustainability is about hosting more original content. So, we want to put our editorial resources towards our best content to make that content even better, and get the best story we can get, coming out of Hackernoon.
Okay. So when a new contributor comes, like where do they come from, right? You don't hire them, you only hire editors, right? So is there any kind of acquisition that you're doing for the contributors?
We put a write button on the site. That's pretty much it.
That's
Yeah.
pretty straightforward.
I mean, yeah, it's whenever we wanted to raise crowdfunding, it's the readers who want to own in the site. They want the site to keep going. And whenever you're reading the site, it's nice that you can contribute to it. You can't really get that across, the New York Times, and so it's a little bit of making the thing you read and, sharing your expertise. But, contributors themselves talking about publishing here, a lot of word of mouth happens with Hackernoon. We don't run any paid ads to acquire writers or customers. We test social media distribution in terms of getting stories more reach and putting some of our budget towards that distribution of what we serve the writer. Search, the best content, rises to the top in the long run. So if we improve the content and we attract, experts, and experts read here and then they want to write about the thing they read, we're going to be served building a quality library in the long run. I think we'll be rewarded. So I think that's where I want to spend my money, on improving the quality, and trust that the internet will reward that.
Right. But you have an integration with Coil, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there is a certain way for contributors to get not just validation of their ideas, but also a few cents here and there
Yeah.
from what they're writing.
So the Coil subscription will just stream in the browser directly to the writer if they add their Coil meta tag. So that kind of gets low payments coming in because it's distributing $5 a month across all the Coil sites they visit, web monetized sites. So those payments have started pretty small. The larger payments we've done so far is with writing contests. So someone will buy like the blockchain tag on Hackernoon, and they'll put a $12,000 reward for writers. And based on the quality, based on the time reading those stories have, and then vote by Hackernoon editors, we send out that $12,000, across, 10, 20, 30 writers, depending on, how the sponsor, how large of prizes they want to do. So we've paid out about $250,000 so far in writing contests. So it's off to a nice start, and it creates the right incentive of all you have to do to enter the contest is use the sponsor tag. You don't have to write anything about the sponsor, and the sponsor just wants to be associated with the tag. You've been to all these marketing meetings where they're trying to be associated with the keyword. That's what we offer. We do not offer any angles. We do not offer any validation that they will endorse you or mention you, but at the bottom of it, it'll say they entered your writing contest because they used the keyword. So that's where the highest growth section of Hackernoon is right now from a business development point. And I just like it from the whole incentives of creating more content, rewarding writers, and having satisfied sponsors.
That's pretty cool. And you mentioned crowdfunding quite a few times already, so I want to circle back to that. So you were bootstrapped for the first 2-3 years, right?
Yeah.
And then you went to crowdfunding. So what did you realize? Like, what kind of growth were you looking for that you went for this kind of investment?
I really wanted to build a software team. It's kind of, I proved using other people's software, that was how far I could grow it. I could grow it to 100K a year business and not really further. And that's the cap on that business with that software. And that's just how it works. So, it was about wanting to grow the business, and the way to do it was software developers. And I mean, we had venture capitalists writing on the site, and I reached out to them and I was like, hey, do you want to invest in this? And they're like, well, you're not that technical. You haven't done it before, and you have a big move coming in front of you that I don't want to bet on you and have to bet on the move. You know what I mean?
Okay.
It's much easier to say bet on me and bet on the system I have and what I've grown, but it's like you have a big challenge in front of you, is really a dumb time to, in a lot of ways, to raise money, but it was the necessity of what we had to do to not kill this business. So, we looked, and it was actually Howard Marks was a Hackernoon contributor and also the CEO of Start Engine. So, I talked to him about what I should do. Basically, I was just talking to the contributors. How do I make this site survive?
That's the
And
best. You always talk to your customers or
yeah,
users.
yeah. And so, equity crowdfunding hit what we had, a large community that could make small amounts. And then we would have a budget to build the next step of the company. And 90% of the traffic from our crowdfunding campaign put from buy shares in Hackernoon atop hackernoon.com. And so that was the primary. It was a lot of work. You have to go through third-party reviews with lawyers, accountants, and it's just small donations take time to build up, and small investments take time to build up. So it was, the campaign ends up running like 3 months, where you don't know where it's going to go. Yeah. And, but, Ling is my partner and my wife, and, she, carried us through that. And it's like, we didn't want to change jobs. So, we made sure the company survived and, gave us the chance to make some more revenue.
Right. Well, 3 months, I guess, is still not that long. I mean, some people just spend 6 months only like approaching investors. So I guess in this
Yeah, it
case,
may have been a little longer than that, but it was 3 months of prep, and then the campaign was live for another 3 to 5. Now it's like 3 years ago. I'm kind of done a lot since then.
all right. Oh, and now the contributors uh, own approximately 13%, if I'm not mistaken.
The crowdfunders own 13% ish, in that range. Coils in the 8% range. Me and Ling own about 2/3 of the company.
Okay,
And then
that's very interesting.
yeah, then
So,
another employee equity is the rest of it.
oh, perfect. I could talk about incentives for some time, but let's leave it for now. How did it change the way you run a business? All those, well, especially the crowdfunding campaign. Did it add any complexity? Did it change anything at all?
Impacted transparency for sure. So we do a quarterly newsletter where it's really like 3 to 8 pages. Really trying to reflect and say what's worked and hasn't worked in this business. We publish shortened versions of them on the site. State of the Union, we call it, for Hackernoon. So that definitely opened the transparency. I mean, it was a marketing channel for sure. We made hires out of that were shareholders. We've gotten customers referred to us from shareholders. So, I mean, overall, they understand this is a private company and this is a long game, and it's going to take a lot more people helping than just us to grow the thing and get where we want to be. So I think, and just to have the confidence that this volume of people is willing to put some amount of money to say, I think this thing can grow. Whenever people are saying this thing can't grow, having a large volume of people say it can definitely helps with saying, I believe it can. They're telling me it can. So I think that stuff was much healthier than, a lot of venture capital. Sometimes it's really, they need the end game, so right. Sometimes the pressure to try and create the end game is not healthy. So I think as other founders look at their shareholders, make sure they understand that what you both think about the end game. Because if you think the end game is 15 years of dedicating your life to this, and they think it's, I'm going to 5x or 7x in the next couple of years, you're going to have an unhealthy tension. So I think, that's my big advice to shareholders. And it doesn't mean don't take venture capital. You just need to both understand what you want in an end game, and you'll have a more likely chance at getting up the hill and, getting where you want to go.
Right, that's true. And in retrospect, would you have done anything differently?
In retrospect, I can't do anything differently. So I'm very happy with where I am. I mean, I've made plenty of mistakes, and sometimes I just have to keep circling back to improve the mistakes, and that's fine. That's what you get with a business. Like if you're doing one tradable problem again and again and again, one tradable transaction, that 5% worse volume of the transaction is going to keep happening. So that's that's what scaling is. You want to make it healthier, but you also know that the same problems happen. It's still writing on the internet. It's still people that are angry sometimes. Like the internet
Yeah.
becomes this keyboard outlet for them. And that's also why I'm really happy not anyone can publish anything on our site, because I just don't really want to be a part of hosting the bad part of the internet.
Right. Okay. And yeah, another thing that I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned you made some hires from the crowdfunding campaign. So who was your first hire?
So Ling was the second full-time employee, basically
Okay.
running all business development. I was running all
That's easy.
editorial. And then the third full-time employee was Dane Lyons, and he took over leading the product. And then after that, we extended software developers, editorial, sales. But for after our first software team was 5 people for a year and a half. Now the company's at about 18 people full time, split between software developers, editors, and sales. And the best hires they come directly from our site. They're already reading Hackernoon. They want to be a part of it. So I stopped, any type of advertising on third-party sites to hire. No third-party recruiters. The best thing is emailing people that already read Hackernoon, and that's because they understand what it is. They understand the trade that's going on, and if they can understand how people are gaining value on the site right now, it doesn't matter what job they do here, they'll be better at it. So it's not a sustainable strategy if you want to double your headcount really fast and really ramp up, because you only get the candidates that are coming to your site. But
Right.
it's for sustainable growth and having at least being able to eliminate all candidates who don't understand what Hackernoon is. This weeds them out. It's only people that already believe in it. So that's my hiring strategy now.
Okay. So there is no way somebody's gonna say, I don't really know what you guys are doing.
Yeah,
Everyone
at least
understands
at
what
some
they're
level, they
getting.
understand that this is a website that they clicked a few buttons on, and
Yeah.
they didn't do it on some other site. They did it on our own.
Right. And are you still fully remote?
I have a satellite office here in Colorado, but yeah, there's no headquarters. I use it. Ling uses it. Sometimes our Denver colleagues will come here and use it, but um, sometimes we'll meet up around the world. We just filmed a documentary in Hanoi, and I met our leaders from Asia and Japan. Flew to Hanoi, and it's very inexpensive to build a film crew there, so we have our first short film coming out. That's
Oh,
pretty
cool.
fun.
When?
March or April.
Okay.
Talks still going on, and so the whole new world for me. I just want, but we have kind of good interviews about the history of the internet that we're kind of putting together, and hopefully it keeps our light tone and our fandom of the shows like The Office with little tribute jokes to just kind of keep it fresh, get some new type of content
Right.
around Hackernoon. Um,
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay, but why do you still keep um, the team so small? And how does it work for you to be fully remote? Because well, at some point, you started driving more traffic than Forbes, right? So how do you sustain this kind of growth and attention with such a small team?
I mean, I look at Craigslist as kind of a model of what type of company I want to be from a
Okay.
structural standpoint, where, they have 50 full time employees. It has a lot of traffic and it makes a lot of money. And it could make a lot more money if it did different things, but it doesn't need to. So I think there's something that, I really want to create a company that gives a lot more value than it needs to extract. So that's kind of to sustain. Um, and to me, 17, 20 people, thinking about them in my lives and really, trying to work together isn't a small group. A small group is me alone on my computer editing stories. So that's what a small group is. Um,
We're way past that.
yeah, and I mean, I think the studies have shown you can kind of have on the high end 130 people in your social circle, but really some of the other studies is more like 40. So when you look around that range, part time plus full time, we're already hitting that 40 range, It's like, how many people can I, really keep in my mind and like help them, So as you start to look at these companies that get bigger than that, like the CEO can become very removed from the work itself. And I want to be an individual contributor first and spending my time making, and then, around that, spend time making a business. So that's just as far as I've been able to, with that mindset. I've only gotten to this point, and I'm very happy to stay in this point. I think we can get better at our jobs and make a lot more money with a small elite group. So that's, yeah, part of it, as a founder, you have to match the business to your personality. You have to match how the team functions to your personality. You have to understand the limitations of your own personality. Because if you set up a
Right.
situation where you're an introvert and you've created a business where you have to do 8 meetings a day, you're probably going to fail. You've unsuccessfully matched, what your mind wants to do with what it can do that makes money and what it can do to help others. So I think I've, grown a little bit over the years where I'm not understanding I'm an introvert, understanding I have to spend more time on the keyboard than I do in meetings like this in order to make Hackernoon grow. So yeah, I think if I could pass anything on to founders, to just be more aware of, like, their personality will shape the business whether they like it or not. So if they get in front of it a little bit, they can probably have a better outcome.
That's true. Okay. Well, I really want to go a bit deeper into the whole software and all the changes that you've been up to for at least the past year, because I can at least relate to that a little bit. So, you've got a ton of different things that you are shipping, right? There is Noonies, there is slogging. What else is there?
I mean, our primary product is this content management system that powers Hackernoon. And we build a lot. We build for 5 users there: the reader, the writer, the editor, and the admin, and the sponsor. So there's the sponsor being a business account, and things like tech company news page defining what is your business in a sentence, and starting to republish your content or bring new content to Hackernoon. So uh, with slogging and Noonies, they kind of came out of necessity. We wanted to reward our writers with basically a poll of who's the best in all these different categories, and who get to name cool names about, like, being whatever on the internet, and give people prizes. We make the prizes NFTs. Sponsors will sponsor some of these contests. So sometimes, if you wrote 3 blogs in February about something, and you win, $300 at the end of the year because someone votes for you. It's like kind of a nice, like, a random gift of money. But when we first looked to do a vote for our community, it was just the voting softwares were very expensive and very cumbersome. It wasn't like, hey, can I just put a widget here with a text and a link and, like, link to the writer? And it was like, no, not really. Can anyone vote? No, they have to log in. Can they log in with Google? No, they have to do it this way. Is it my account? No, it's my account. So it's like
Oh,
all these voting softwares, like, we just couldn't find a good one. So we just built one. So that's kind of how Noonies came about, as a way to reward writers. And then we reused the voting software and kind of built a new version of it to rank all the startups in the world by location. Um, and that was a really good experiment too, to just learn more about what people are building. So we'll be launching a new version of that with kind of stories curated next to it, because before, the voting software just had votes, and a good system for measuring votes, control over weighted votes. So, like, published authors would be rewarded more, and their votes would count more than just an average reader, which we thought made sense because they're the ones contributing content to the site and building up the library. So I think they earn more authority about who gets rewarded. So we were trying to. It's like this thing where it's its own app, but it also integrates with Hackernoon. And so we'll keep growing on it. And it kind of got us down the path of getting badges and awards as NFTs, and kind of having a badge you can bring with you. If all these other sites were to die tomorrow, you can't take the badge with you. Like, you can take a screenshot of it, but it won't be live on the site. I want to have, like, if you earn it on Hackernoon, you can take it elsewhere. And an NFT kind of solved that, of you could take the NFT to any of these other places, which is kind of cool. And with slogging, it also came out of user, our internal needs. We realized Dane, our chief product officer, had done like 12 or 15,000 Slack updates, and over the same period had 3 Hackernoon posts. And we were like, okay, something is off there. We're very happy he's writing all these thoughtful things, and we want like fostering a healthy Slack community is like, or whatever your messaging tool is, it's really essential for remote teams. So it's like very encouraging stuff, but also why only 3 posts, you know? So slogging came out of turning threads into Hackernoon posts. And now, hey, I want to export my content from Slack instead of, and I've been, you know, on the other side of it at my last job, trying to run the Smart Recruiters blog and trying to recruit all these teammates to write. It's always a one-off thing. It's like, I already have a job, David. Like, you know, that I'm doing my main job, and now you're asking me to write. So slogging hit a nice sweet spot of, where are you already writing? Can we just pull out the best 3% of that, best 1% of that, and make it a blog post? And then the challenge became a little more curation and not writing something new. But it's new to the internet. It's adding value that wasn't available before. That content left was hidden in your Slack, and it just served value for your own people. So that one's done about 500 posts, and anyone can download it at slogging.com. And it's a single word, you know, so it's slogging, and it's just this. It kind of became a little bit of a slog, you know, because Hackernoon is growing much faster than slogging. So it's kind of like an app that we have that's kind of stably growing, you know, next to it. And we really want to just have more systems to, you know, move content around Hackernoon and improve content. So we've been working with Hackernoon a lot. We did an AI headline generation tool, which is really cool. And what's cool about it versus what some of the stuff that's trending now is much more, prompt is short, content is long. I think a better use case for AI is content is very long, AI is very short, and you know, gives you, so it's saying, hey, how could I summarize these 500 words in, you know, an 7 to 10 word headline? And now you get 5 options, and you don't have to use any of them, but at least it gives you 5 different structures of what a headline could be based on the content you as a human already made. So I think that trying to find the right ways to bring trending technology into the content management system, and we don't have to wait for someone else to release a plugin to put it on our site. You know, so that's where it's been really exciting, and I think we're growing faster, is just taking a much more API approach and saying, when this thing starts to trend, let's see how it could fit in. You know, and if you want, like, feature images have historically just been a tough thing of blogging. You know, it's the first thing someone will come after you for money. You used my photo wrongly. You know, like, they'll come at, if you start a new blog, it's one of the first challenges you're going to run into. And Unsplash and these other open photo libraries kind of changed the game a bit, where at least you can get a quality photo for free, and you should accredit, but you don't have to. You know, and that kind of opened up this whole library. And now the third kind of row we're seeing is AI image generation. In AI image generation, we're building a large library. You can enter a prompt or just hit paste on your headline and say, hey, what does my headline generate? And the headline generation ones aren't as good because they're too abstract. And what you want for imagery is you want to tell them more about just, it's just visual. You know, you just want to describe it, what it looks like. But, you know, you can enter prompts on Hackernoon, and we'll use either Stable Diffusion or Midjourney, and we'll call the API and we'll send it back in a couple seconds. And so now you can have an original image that matches your headline. It's like a fingerprint. You know, the feature image is a second headline, but it's also a fingerprint of proving, like, you know, hey, this image matches to this person, you know. And so I think it's that's the use cases of AI that I've been really excited about with Hackernoon, and really I'm hopeful that AI can be, you know, assisting as opposed to replacing when it comes to
Right.
creating.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I think it's an amazing technology. Another question that I really would love to ask is, because I keep hearing about blockchain, about NFT. So why is it such a big part of Hackernoon, and what exactly is it that it links blockchain and NFT to Hackernoon, and why did you decide that it's going to be this big part?
Well, I didn't decide it. What links it is the stories that came in. You know, one good story. I mean, WTF is blockchain. We published that in 2017, and it was 3,500 words, just trying to explain it as simple as you can, of, you know, making a public ledger. And that post was like in the New York Times and other sites. And then people that wanted to talk about this came back. So, you know, the best thing to attract the next story is the last big story. Excuse me. And
Right.
you read something you like and you work in that industry, you want to explain your own point of view on it. So It wasn't something I set out to do, but I did, set out to have people talk about what's next and have people talk about what they're building. And it's a clean exchange of values. If you talk about what you're building, I help you get readers that are interested in also building things like that. It's a good thing to work together. So that's where it became, just it's I would say it's more just we're a reflection of what the consciousness is of the tech industry, and not we're trying to say this is the editorial line. And I think um, there's a lot of stuff that it's too consolidated, and the idea of replacing the database, replacing hosting, having peer-to-peer hosting, the idea of getting out of who's your largest bill of a high traffic site. It's the hosting provider, or ideally providers, and you want to distribute your hosting. And that's, you look at AWS's, how important they are to Amazon over the last 15 years. It's just, you see exactly how important hosting is in the long term, and how consolidated a lot of the internet is. So I think a lot of people were feeling that, and that's why they wrote about it. And so I've tried to integrate where I can, and look at, like, we have login with a wallet. So if you don't want to give us email and you want to create an account with just the identity of your wallet, or sign up with a wallet, you can still do that and enter writing contests and get paid without us ever knowing your email address, which is
Right.
essential. You can't even view an image on Facebook or Pinterest without giving them an email address. That's as a viewer,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, not even a creator. So I think the bar of what trades are happening here is it's skewed too far against the individual for giving up more in order to get very little. So I think there's a lot of exciting things that blockchain could help with there, and just more the reality of what the next internet. It may not, we don't, some of the technologies that will make it won't be a part of it, but I think the people are seeing more technologies to make the internet more distributed across more small businesses and medium-sized businesses, powering more of the internet, and less consolidation at the top. I think the technology is allowing the businesses to hopefully move that way. So that's what excites me, about how the next internet could be, and the small part, Hackernoon can play a part of it. I'm here to help.
All right. Well, you're obviously doing everything to like stay on top of the trends and like moving on with how the internet improves and grows and develops. But one more question, because you're moving, growing so fast, and obviously you started scaling a few years ago. So what changed for you personally as a founder? Like, how do you keep up scaling, and then caring about the people in your team and caring about what you're doing, and people who contribute to Hackernoon?
Personally, what's changed is I had kids, so that made me more responsible. It made myself less the center of the universe, and made me really a better colleague. I would say a better person to work with. So personally, I think that's really the only notable shift. I think as the team scales, watching my tone and understanding, what, hey, if the more you're a leader, the more people are extrapolating what you're trying to say. The more you're truly an individual contributor, no one's extrapolating anything. You're just doing it and living with the results. So that balance, I like it. I think it's made me more thoughtful about just what to work on, what to say, the value of words. Um, and I mean, these colleagues, you end up spending half your time with them. Like for if you're working 50 hours a week, you get to know your colleagues very well, and having kind people that like building things is just, if you're not surrounded by kind people that like building things, you're not going to build things, and you're not going to be happy. So I think we've got a good group, and we stay remote, but we're meeting up a couple times a year. So it's kind of looking at spending that way to build together for a little bit and get on the same page and get to know each other more in person, and then go off and do our own thing. We're pretty much all introverts here at Hackernoon, so we don't really want to like be meeting with you that often.
No,
Anybody does.
twice a year is quite enough. Okay, that's very honest. All right, so just a couple of last questions. So, what was so far the biggest win and the biggest failure, whether for Hackernoon as a business or for you as a founder?
The biggest win? Hmm. I mean, in terms of business over the last year, writing contest is the number one source of revenue, and they've been really fun to run, and they've brought in a lot of good content. So I think, and it's just cool to find an arrangement that serves three user types at once, and three types of people, three people doing three different objectives. So that's been a pretty good win. But I mean, just personally spending more of my life building software, I would say, as a win of just being happy with things I'm putting out in the world. So yeah,
That's
it's
great.
hard to. It's nice to ask these questions about biggest wins, but it's really like the little wins, I guess, that
Yeah.
kind of get to add up. Like my schedule's kind of normalized again, and I'm. We just did a lot of whole year-end review and going through trying to just think bigger about what worked and didn't work, over the last year. So I'm just happy to take a deep breath and be able to use the keyboard today.
That's perfect. All right, and well, I have just one bonus question for you. What is who is one person that you would absolutely love to work with in the future?
Um,
Is there?
Maybe Mark Cuban would be cool. I mean, he owns the Mavericks,
Okay.
so maybe if I'm working with him, I could go to some Mavericks games. And I really like what he's doing, undercutting all the pharmaceutical companies and selling drugs at just 15% above cost, as opposed to this whole convoluted thing of a medicine costs a certain amount of money because the control is limited, and it feels like it's like some sort of oil oligarchy getting medicine. So I think he's done a good job there of putting a stable, sustainable business behind a real problem, and can make a lot of money that way. So, but not the Shark Tank stuff. So maybe not. I don't know. Maybe I could pick somebody else.
All right. Well, I'll make sure to tag him under the podcast somewhere there. Maybe there is your shot. All right. Well, it's been amazing talking with you. I mean, absolutely everybody I know was super excited that you're coming to the podcast, me included. So thank you so much for making the time. And obviously, would love to do it again sometime and learn even more about what you're shipping for Hackernoon.
Cool, Anna. Thanks for having me. I had a lot of fun here.
Awesome. All right. Same here. Take care.
See
Bye.
ya.